The glowing numerals on my bedside clock screamed 1 a.m., not a gentle awakening, but a violent digital intrusion. Then came the ping, an email. My heart, usually a steady drum, lurched. The sender, Zenith Dynamics. The subject line, urgent HR notification. No, this wasn't urgent. This was a calculated strike, timed for maximum shock. I clicked, dread curdling in my gut. The words burned into my retinas, cold and precise. Subject, termination of employment, Seraphina Thorne. Dear Ms. Thorne, this letter serves to formally notify you of the immediate termination of your employment with Zenith Dynamics, effective 1 a.m. Current date, e.g., August 1st, 2025. This decision is final. Further details regarding your severance package, final compensation, and benefits will be communicated by our HR department within 5 business days. All company access, including digital systems and physical premises, has been revoked. We wish you the best in your future endeavors. Sincerely, Zenith Dynamics Human Resources. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just sat there, still in my work slacks, the bluish sheen of my laptop casting across the cool tiles of my Silicon Valley kitchen floor. My eyes blinked at the subject line like it had just punched me in the chest. Immediate termination. Effective now. The timestamp read 1 a.m. No call, no explanation. No meeting with HR, just an email. A single line that severed 25 years of service like it meant nothing. My name is Seraphina Thorne, or at least it was before they tried to erase it from the company I helped build. 25 years ago, Zenith Dynamics was a dusty little startup renting shared space in a forgotten corner of a bustling tech hub. I was their fourth hire back then. There were no systems, no departments, just survival. I designed our first compliance framework on a borrowed laptop, fueled by reheated coffee. I closed our first grant deal from a diner phone booth at midnight, scribbling notes on napkins. Over 2 decades, I led the company's entire funding and integrity operations division, built the digital infrastructure, and authored the core protocols that governed every major donation and investment. But none of that seemed to matter to Elias Croft, the newly installed Chief Operating Officer. He was young, maybe 34, fresh out of a top-tier MBA program, stamped across his LinkedIn like a brand name. Tall, sharp-featured, confident, too confident. The kind of confidence that doesn't come from experience, but from always being told you're exceptional. At his welcome meeting, he walked in with that signature tech bro energy, talking about velocity, lean transformation, and optimizing legacy workflows. I remember that phrase specifically, optimizing legacy workflows. It was a euphemism. What he really meant was, cut the people who've been here too long, the ones who don't fit the new culture, the ones who, like me, built the house but don't match the decor anymore. He didn't know me, and frankly, he didn't care. His job was to modernize us. That meant cutting heads, starting with the ones that knew the company's actual foundation. Still, I never thought it would happen this way. 1 a.m. A cold message, no signature, and silence so deep it felt like the air had frozen in place. I stared at the screen, not moving, not blinking. My hands stayed on the keyboard, motionless. I must have sat like that for 22 minutes, long enough for the cursor to time out and the screen to dim. Then something strange happened. I opened a new tab, expecting access to be cut off. But I wasn't locked out. My login still worked. Internal servers, dashboard functions, even system root directories, still active. They actually forgot to revoke my access. The same vulnerability I had flagged in a report last quarter, the one Elias's team marked non-essential, had just bought me a window. And I was still in the system, still holding the keys. The cursor on the screen hadn't moved. Neither had I. I was. I was still sitting there, hours after that email. My legs were numb, my coffee had gone cold, but my mind was wide awake, spinning backward through time. If they could erase me with one message, I had to remember who I was before they tried to rewrite history. Zenith Dynamics wasn't always a polished tower of glass and buzzwords in this gleaming Silicon Valley complex. Back in 2005, it was a couple of rented rooms over a print shop, a broken air conditioner, and an idea nobody believed in but four of us. Our founder, a brilliant but chaotic visionary named Arthur Finch, used to call us his original blood types, because without us, the whole company would have flatlined in its first quarter. I wasn't just the funding officer. I was the cleaner, the late-night editor, the grant chaser, the compliance nerd. I was the one who picked up bagels when the Liam Chen interns forgot. I wasn't in it for the recognition. I was in it because I believed in what we were building, and we did build it, brick by digital brick. I stayed when we couldn't make payroll. I stayed when our first product failed FDA review. I stayed through restructures, acquisitions, new leadership, all of it. And I stayed long enough to create what they now call the spine of our funding ecosystem, the digital infrastructure that handles every single dollar coming into the company. They used to call it Kong Atlas. No one talks about that name now. They gave it a fancier front end, rebranded the interface, assigned it to a newer team. But the core code, the logic layer, the verification protocols, they're mine. I wrote them on sleepless nights, on coffee-stained notepads, inside a Linux terminal window that hadn't been updated since 2006. And I didn't just build it, I protected it. Because that system didn't just move money, it validated trust. Every grant, every donation, every high-profile partnership had to pass through it. Without it, we were just another tech startup playing pretend. A few years into building it, I got smart. I asked for a clause in 2007, buried deep in an addendum to my contract. I secured personal authorship rights over the Kong Atlas source structure. It wasn't much legally, but it meant I kept a full encrypted backup of the original code on a separate external drive, one they never accessed. One I still had. My eyes snapped open. A hard drive, my Kong Atlas backup. A flicker of something dangerous, something defiant, ignited in my chest. I pushed myself up from the cold floor, the numbness in my legs slowly giving way to a surge of adrenaline. I walked to the walk-in closet in my home office, pulling down a small fireproof box from a top shelf. Inside, tucked under some old tax returns and my mother's engagement ring, was a hard drive labeled in black Sharpie, Atlas Core Backup V 1.07. I held it in my hands, feeling the weight of it. It was only a few ounces, but in this moment, it felt heavier than everything they had taken from me. They thought they buried my legacy, but I still held its heartbeat. And now, for the first time in 2.5 decades, I wasn't sure if I'd protect it or let them feel what it truly meant to lose it. The Atlas Gateway was more than code. It was my vindication. The first time I saw the press release, I thought it was a draft. It had to be. The formatting looked too polished. The quotes were too scripted, and my name was nowhere. I hit refresh, then again, and again. Same result, $88 million. The largest grant in Zenith Dynamics history, splashed across the homepage under a headline that read, "New era of biotech funding begins with Global Innovation Trust Partnership." A photo of Elias Croft mid-handshake sat proudly at the top, flanked by a few junior managers I had personally trained, each one smiling, each one listed under key contributors. And me? Not even in the footnotes. 8 months of negotiations, hundreds of emails, dozens of 3 a.m. calls with Zurich, Back-to-back compliance reviews that nearly broke the legal team. It was my grant, my building, my system. And now it had my silence, but not my name. Back then, when it started, no one wanted the project. The Global Innovation Trust was notorious for rejecting 9 out of 10 applicants. Their due diligence process was ruthless. Months of audits, ethical screenings, simulations, backtracking through old financials. No one wanted to touch it, but I said yes. Not because it was easy, but because it mattered. The first contact came through an old referral. They called the main office line on a Saturday. The operator was out. The call rerouted to me because I had built the redundancy protocol years ago. It was 10:15 a.m., and I was in the middle of grocery shopping. I picked up out of habit. 45 minutes later, I was already sketching the proposal outline on the back of a store receipt in the car. That was how it started. What followed were months of planning. Some in boardrooms, some in hotel lobbies, some in my kitchen at 1:30 a.m. with a mug of reheated coffee. I had customized Kong Atlas's logging system to meet their transparency demands, redesigned our audit trail engine, and walked both our executive team and the Trust's board through every piece of technical documentation myself. And still nothing. Not a line. Not a whisper of recognition. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen, trying not to feel what was already building behind my ribs, a mixture of exhaustion and something heavier. Betrayal. How many times had I told myself this was worth it? How many weekends had I traded in the name of vision? How many problems had I solved quietly so someone else could take credit at the microphone? Before I could spiral, my phone buzzed. A notification from my personal email, the one no one at work knew I still used. Subject: thank you. Off the record. From Alden Reed, Senior Director at Global Innovation Trust. I opened it slowly, expecting logistics. Instead, I read, Serafina, I just wanted to say thank you. You've been the reason this partnership has held together. Your clarity, your honesty, and your command of the system impressed not just me, but our full board. This level of transparency is rare. You've set a new standard. I hope your team recognizes that. Alden. I read it twice, then a third time. My hands trembled, not from pride, but from the ache of what it meant. They didn't see me, but he did. Not in headlines, not in photo ops, but in the fine print, where real work lives. I could have printed that email. I could have framed it. Instead, I archived it, along with every other message they would never acknowledge. Because deep down, part of me still wanted to believe they'd come around. They wouldn't, and that realization hurt more than being erased, because I hadn't lost the credit. I had lost the illusion that they ever meant to give it. And somewhere beneath all that hurt was a flicker of something colder. Something that hadn't had space to breathe in 25 years. Resolve. The first sign came in the form of silence. Not the kind of silence that fills an empty hallway, but the kind that seeps into your inbox. Quiet meetings you're no longer invited to. Agendas you once reviewed, but now receive only after the fact. You notice it in how people pause before speaking to you, in the way they glance down when they pass your desk. It's slow, almost polite, like erasure dressed in a suit. It started 3 weeks after Elias Croft became COO. He was young, maybe 34, fresh out of a top-tier MBA program, stamped across his LINKEDIN like a brand name. Tall, sharp-featured, confident, too confident. The kind of confidence that doesn't come from experience, but from always being told you're exceptional. At his welcome meeting, he walked in with that signature tech bro energy, talking about velocity, lean transformation, and optimizing legacy workflows. I remember that phrase specifically, optimizing legacy workflows. It was a euphemism. What he really meant was, Cut the people who've been here too long, the ones who don't fit the new culture, the ones who, like me, built the house but don't match the decor anymore. Within a week, things shifted. I was no longer said on review threads I had started. My access to certain dashboards I created, was downgraded without warning. I filed a support ticket and was told it was a permissions update aligned with revised security roles. I translated that as, Elias's new team had begun reassigning control. Meetings moved to smaller rooms, then to private video calls, then off my calendar entirely. When I asked about the quarterly grant forecast, which had always been my responsibility, the CFO just shrugged, a nervous twitch in his eye. Elias's team is streamlining reporting, he mumbled, avoiding my gaze. I wasn't even given a chance to push back. The once clear lines of communication at Zenith Dynamics were rapidly becoming a tangled, opaque mess. And then came the final insult. I received a draft report titled, Projected Institutional Grant Expansion 2028 Plan. It was detailed, strategic, full of forward-thinking language. But as I scanned the graphs and tables, a cold realization hit me. It was mine. Word for word, metric for metric. It was the document I'd been building for 2 months. The exact phrasing, the structure, the grant funnel simulation. I recognized it. Every single carefully chosen phrase, every innovative projection. This wasn't a realignment or streamlining. This was outright theft. And the author listed? Caleb Vance, an intern who had only been with the company for a few weeks, someone I'd barely even spoken to. My stomach clenched. This wasn't just about professional slight anymore. This was a calculated, deliberate act of erasure. The plagiarism by Caleb Vance, brazenly overlooked by Elias Croft, was just the beginning. The silence that had crept into my inbox now enveloped my entire professional life at Zenith Dynamics. It was an insidious form of excommunication, subtle enough to deny, yet impossible to ignore. My direct reports, once eager to collaborate, became increasingly distant. Their eyes would dart away when I approached, their conversations hushed. Serafina, my longtime assistant, a bright young woman named Chloe, had whispered to me just a few days before her reassignment. They told me not to forward your calls directly to Elias anymore. Said it was to streamline communication channels. A flimsy excuse, and we both knew it. Within 2 days, Chloe was temporarily reassigned to a project in a different department, leaving me with an empty desk and a growing sense of dread. I tried to fight back, quietly at first. I scheduled a meeting with HR to discuss the Projected Institutional Grant Expansion 2028 Plan that bore Caleb Vance's name. I brought my meticulously dated drafts, my detailed notes, the digital timestamps. The HR representative, a new hire named David, listened politely, nodding, but his eyes were vacant. Ms. Thorne, we understand your concerns, he'd said, his voice flat. But Mr. Vance's project has been fully endorsed by Mr. Crockett. These things happen. Sometimes ideas align. Align. David, it's a word-for-word copy, I retorted, my voice rising. Are you telling me Zenith Dynamics condones plagiarism, especially by an intern on a document that secures an $88 million pipeline? He'd just offered a practiced, empty smile. We will look into it, Ms. Thorne. Rest assured, Zenith Dynamics upholds the highest ethical standards. But there was no assurance in his tone, only dismissal. My meetings with other department heads, once a staple of my week, dwindled to nothing. Invitations to strategic planning sessions, where my input on financial integrity had been crucial for 25 years, simply stopped arriving. I was a ghost in the gleaming glass tower, my presence acknowledged only by the occasional pitying glance. I'd walk through the bustling, open-plan offices, past familiar faces who now seemed to find their screens intensely interesting whenever I passed. The final bitter pill came a week before the grand celebration for the $88 million Global Innovation Trust grant. An internal email circulated, previewing the commemorative materials for the event. There was a large team photo taken months ago, celebrating the initial stages of securing the funding. I remembered that day, standing proudly in the front row, a rare smile on my face. But now, as the image loaded, a cold, sickening wave washed over me. My face was gone. Literally. Where I had stood, there was now an awkward, pixelated gap, as if someone had taken a pair of digital scissors and simply cut me out. The people on either side of me were closer together, as if I had never existed. The architect of trust, the guardian of integrity, reduced to an empty space in a photograph, an inconvenient omission. It was a stark, brutal message. They weren't just taking my work. They were systematically erasing me from Zenith's history. The anger I'd felt after Elias's dismissive remarks, after Caleb's plagiarism, now coalesced into something far more dangerous. A quiet, simmering rage meticulously sharpened. They wanted me gone? Fine. But they wouldn't get rid of Serafina Thorne without knowing the true cost of burying a legacy. The internal memo landed in my inbox with a familiar fanfare, a stark contrast to the silence that had become my daily companion. Subject: Zenith Dynamics, Celebrating a New Era, Global Innovation Trust Grant Gala. Attached were glossy renderings of the event space in a sprawling, modern convention center in the heart of Silicon Valley. Rows of elegant tables, towering floral arrangements, and a grand stage awaiting Elias Croft to bask in the glory of the $88 million grant. My grant. The irony was a bitter taste in my mouth. The gala was set for next Thursday, exactly 1 week from now. A lavish affair designed to showcase Zenith's triumph and solidify Elias's position as the visionary new leader. They were even flying in VIPs from the Global Innovation Trust, including Alden Reed, the one person who truly knew my contribution. His presence at their celebration, devoid of my presence, felt like a personal affront. I stared at the screen, the image of that photoshopped group photo still seared into my mind. They thought they had erased me. They thought I was gone, rendered harmless, just another forgotten cog in their optimizing legacy workflows scheme. But they had forgotten the 1 a.m. email. They had forgotten the glitch, and they had certainly forgotten the architect of Atlas. My fingers, almost instinctively, moved to my keyboard. I opened a fresh terminal window on my personal laptop, the familiar green text against a black background a comforting sight. My work laptop, of course, was now a useless brick, but the system they forgot to revoke access to was still very much alive through my old personal credentials, linked to a legacy backdoor pathway only I knew how to activate. It was the very vulnerability I had flagged repeatedly, only to be dismissed by Elias's team. Non-essential, they'd called it. How ironic. My mind, once numb from shock, now buzzed with cold, calculated purpose. I navigated through the labyrinthine directories of Zenith's internal network. No resistance, no alarm. It was like walking through an open door into a house I had built and still knew every secret passage of. I accessed the primary financial dashboard. The $88 million fund transfer was scheduled for final authorization at precisely 8 p.m. on the night of the gala. A large green button labeled Authorize Global Trust Transfer glowed, awaiting the final push from Elias's office. I scrolled deeper into the core structure of Kong Atlas. My system. Every line of code, every security protocol, every single verification step was etched into my memory. And then I saw it. The key sig biometric lock. It was a failsafe I had built years ago, an ultimate layer of protection for transfers of this magnitude. It required a unique, multi-layered biometric sequence that only I could trigger. It wasn't just my fingerprint or retina scan. It was a complex series of physiological and neural patterns unique to the person who designed and deeply integrated with the system. Nobody else at Zenith knew it existed, let alone how to bypass it. They trusted the automation, unaware of the silent guardian I had embedded. A chilling thought solidified in my mind. They wanted to parade their stolen victory? They wanted to claim my $88 million grant without my name on it? Fine. Let them prepare their speeches. Let them polish their awards. But the true power lay not in the spotlights, but in the silence of the code. The keys were still in my hand, and this time, I wasn't just protecting the system, I was protecting my legacy. The gala wouldn't just be a celebration. It would be a revelation. The night of the Zenith Dynamics Gala arrived, a spectacle of glass and light in the Grand Convention Hall. I wasn't there, of course, physically present among the glittering elite. But my presence, unseen, was more potent than any speech Elias Croft could deliver. From my quiet home office, the same place where I'd received that life-altering email, I watched a live stream of the event. The camera panned across tables laden with exotic food, perfectly coiffed guests, and the faces of people who once called me a colleague, now oblivious to the silent storm brewing. On the main stage, a colossal screen displayed Zenith's soaring stock prices and projected future successes. Below it, Elias Croft stood, charismatic and smug, shaking hands with dignitaries, including Alden Reed from the Global Innovation Trust. Reed looked uncomfortable, his usual composed demeanor slightly strained, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes as Elias beamed beside him. I imagined Alden's internal struggle, knowing the truth of how this $88 million grant was truly secured, yet forced to participate in this charade. My fingers hovered over my keyboard, eyes fixed on the time displayed on Zenith's internal financial dashboard. 7:58 p.m. 2 minutes until the scheduled final authorization of the $88 million transfer. I had meticulously timed this. The Authorize Global Trust Transfer button on the screen glowed menacingly. Elias would likely be making his grand announcement any minute, perhaps even as the system processed the final funds. I opened a secure terminal, my familiar green text unfurling against the black. I could hear Elias's amplified voice through my speakers, beginning his address. Tonight, we mark a new chapter for Zenith Dynamics, a chapter defined by innovation, by aggressive growth, and by strategic partnerships that will redefine the future of biotech funding. He paused for applause, soaking it in. 7:59 p.m. My heart hammered against my ribs, a chaotic drum solo. This wasn't just about money. It was about exposing a betrayal. It was about reclaiming a legacy. I navigated quickly, precisely, bypassing layers of newly implemented but ultimately flawed security protocols. Elias's team had streamlined, yes, but they hadn't understood the deep, inherent logic of Kong Atlas. They had mistaken complexity for inefficiency. And it is with immense pride, Elias boomed, that I announce the culmination of this pivotal partnership with the Global Innovation Trust. The largest grant in Zenith's history, a staggering $88 million, is now officially secured and finalized, propelling us into an unprecedented era of discovery. As he spoke, my screen flashed 8 p.m. The Authorize button on the dashboard pulsed, awaiting the automated release sequence. This was it. My left hand went to the biometric scanner I kept plugged into my personal system, a discrete device, usually for highly sensitive personal financial transactions. My right hand, with a practiced fluidity honed over 25 years, typed in the commands, accessing the deepest layer of Kong Atlas. The system responded instantly, recognizing the unique key SIG I had built into its very core. It was a digital lock only I could trigger, a silent guardian I had embedded years ago for moments exactly like this. A single, final command. My finger pressed down on the scanner. A low hum, a subtle flash of light from the device. On the dashboard, the glowing Authorize button flickered. Then, it turned red. Transfer authorization revoked, initiated by Serafina Thorne. The message flashed on my private terminal, confirming the block. The system logs, designed by me, would clearly show who initiated the command. There was no denying it. On the live stream, Elias Croft's triumphant smile faltered. His eyes, fixed on a monitor offstage, widened in disbelief. A murmur rippled through the crowd, growing louder, more frantic. The grand celebration had just been interrupted, not by a physical presence, but by the ghost of the architect they thought they had buried. The chaos had begun. The chaos rippled outward from the grand gala, a digital tsunami hitting Zenith Dynamics. My live stream showed Elias Croft's face, contorted in fury and confusion as he fumbled with his earpiece, trying to get answers from someone off screen. The celebratory murmurs in the hall quickly dissolved into agitated whispers, then outright shouts as guests, alerted by their own devices, realized the $88 million transfer had failed. Reporters, initially there to praise, were now scrambling, phones held aloft, capturing the unfolding disaster. My personal terminal, usually a quiet hub, erupted. Internal Zenith communications channels, which I could still monitor, went into overdrive. The financial department's chat was a frantic stream of capital letters. Transfer blocked. What happened? System initiated revocation? Who is Serafina Thorne? The last question was a grim satisfaction. They remembered my name now. For a few hours, I simply watched, a silent observer of the havoc I had wrought. The stock market reacted swiftly. Zenith Dynamics shares, which had been projected to soar, plummeted. News anchors on financial channels, usually discussing market trends, were now dissecting the unprecedented system failure at Zenith, speculating about internal sabotage. Elias Croft's carefully constructed image was crumbling in real time. My phone, lying silently beside my laptop, finally vibrated. Not an unknown number, not a media query, but Alden Reed. My heart pounded. This was the man who had privately acknowledged my work, the one whose organization was now embroiled in this very public fiasco. I hesitated, then answered. Serafina. Alden's voice was calm, steady, cutting through the background noise of his own agitated team. There was no anger, no accusation, only a quiet understanding. I saw the system log, initiated by Serafina Thorne. I always knew you had that capability. I just never thought you'd use it. They left me no choice, Alden, I said, my voice hoarse. They erased me. They stole my work, my legacy. They tried to take the $88 million grant I secured without a single mention of my name, my system. What would you have done? A long sigh from his end. No, Serafina, I understand. Believe me, I saw the patterns, the sidelining, the way Elias operated. It's why I sent you that email, off the record, months ago. I knew what was happening. So, what now? I asked, bracing myself. Are you going to pursue legal action against me? Against Zenith? Legal action against you? Alden chuckled softly, a dry, tired sound. No, Serafina, quite the opposite. The Global Innovation Trust has officially terminated its partnership with Zenith Dynamics, effective immediately. Their integrity framework, or rather their lack of one, is incompatible with our mission. The funds were pulled before any irrevocable damage, thanks to you. My breath hitched. They pulled the funding. The entire $88 million was safe, secured by my last defiant act. But the grant? What about the projects? The research? That's where you come in, Serafina, Alden said, his voice gaining a new, focused energy. We at the Trust have been discussing a new model for grant management, a transparent, integrity-first approach. We need someone who understands the very fabric of trust, someone who can build it from the ground up without compromise. He paused, then delivered the words that reshaped my fractured world. We want you, Serafina, to lead it, to design Zenith's true successor, to build a new enterprise with full autonomy, a new standard for ethical funding. The $88 million? It's still available, for the right vision, for the right leader, for you. My heart, which had been a drum of fury, now began to beat with the rhythm of possibility. A new chapter, not just for me, but for the principles I believed in. The offer from Alden Reed wasn't just a lifeline, it was a revelation. It was the universe course-correcting, a second chance to build something truly aligned with my principles. Full autonomy, he'd promised, a new standard for ethical funding. There was only one condition from my end. No involvement from Zenith Dynamics, Alden, I stated firmly during our video call the next morning. My voice was calm, resolute. Not a single former executive, not a shadow of their influence. This new venture has to be clean, a complete break. Alden smiled, a genuine, relieved expression. Understood, Serafina. Completely agreed. The Global Innovation Trust wants a fresh start, untainted by the mess we just witnessed. This is your vision now. You call the shots. And so, Joy Tak Atlas, Atlas Partners, was born. The name resonated with me, a reclaiming of my true legacy. It wasn't just about the system. It was about partnership, collaboration, and the very foundation of trust. We set up operations in a sleek, minimalist co-working space on the outskirts of Silicon Valley, far from the gleaming, now troubled towers of Zenith. No glass offices, no ostentatious displays of wealth. Just quiet, focused work, driven by a shared purpose. The news of Zenith's public implosion spread like wildfire. The $88 million grant failure, followed by Alden Reed's public statement regarding irreconcilable differences in ethical governance, sent shockwaves through the industry. Investors began pulling out. Key talent started looking for exits. The modernization Elias Croft had so eagerly pursued had turned into a catastrophic collapse. And then the phone calls started coming. Not from headhunters, but from old colleagues, the ones who knew my work, who valued integrity over corporate politics. First was David, my former lead developer on the Atlas project, a quiet genius who'd always supported my meticulousness. Serafina, he'd said, his voice tinged with relief. I'm out of Zenith. Heard about Atlas Partners. You building something real? Because I want in. Then came Maria, a brilliant compliance officer who had also clashed with Elias's shortcuts. They cut me out of the photo, too, metaphorically speaking, she joked wryly. Are you taking applications for people who actually believe in due diligence? One by one, they arrived. Not a trickle, but a steady stream of dedicated professionals, all disillusioned by Zenith's turn, all drawn to the promise of Atlas Partners. It was humbling, empowering. We were a small team, but we were mighty, united by a common disdain for unethical practices and a fierce desire to build something better. One afternoon, as I was reviewing some initial blueprints for Atlas Partners' new digital infrastructure, my office door swung open. Standing there, a gentle smile on his face, was Jasper Blackwood, my former mentor, the man who had guided my early career at Zenith. He'd retired a few years ago, disillusioned by the changing corporate climate. Serafina, he said, stepping in. I saw the news. About Zenith. And about you. Knew you'd land on your feet. Jasper, I replied, genuinely pleased to see him. It's good to see a friendly face, especially one that still remembers me. He chuckled, then his expression grew serious. I always remembered you, Serafina, and I always knew Elias Croft was poison. I couldn't do anything about it then. He paused, his gaze fixed on mine. Years ago, before he even joined Zenith, I'd heard rumors from a mutual contact at his previous company. He was involved in a similar streamlining operation. Cut corners, pushed out experienced staff, took credit for others' work, and left a trail of ethical gray areas. I tried to warn the board when he was being considered for COO, but they were too enamored with his vision and cost-cutting proposals. My eyes widened. You knew? All along? The revelation hit me with a mix of validation and fresh anger. Jasper had seen it coming, but his warnings had been dismissed, just like mine. It wasn't personal malice from Elias. It was a pattern, a predatory, systemic approach to corporate ascent. Yes, Jasper sighed, a weary wisdom in his eyes. But sometimes, Serafina, you have to let them dig their own graves, and sometimes it takes a seismic event for the truth to truly come out. He glanced at my screen, at the words Atlas Partners gleaming on the blueprint. Looks like you're building a whole new world from the rubble. The knowledge solidified my resolve even further. This wasn't just about reclaiming my name. It was about building a bulwark against men like Elias Croft, ensuring that integrity, true innovation, and the quiet dedication of people like us would finally find their true home. The day came, crisp and clear, a stark contrast to the turbulent months that preceded it. It was the official signing ceremony for the Global Innovation Trust's partnership with Joy Tak Atlas. Not a lavish gala in a sterile convention center, but a quiet, dignified affair held in our own burgeoning office space, filled with the hum of dedicated colleagues and the scent of fresh coffee. Alden Reed was there, a genuine smile on his face, no longer constrained by corporate pretenses. Serafina, Alden began, extending a hand across the polished oak table. This isn't just a signing. This is a testament to what happens when integrity meets opportunity. Before us lay the formidable contract. The terms were exactly as we'd negotiated. Full autonomy, complete control over the $88 million in grant funding, channeled directly to the groundbreaking projects it was intended for. There were no hidden clauses, no backroom deals, no Elias Croft-esque streamlining language. It was clean. It was transparent. It was everything Zenith Dynamics had ceased to be. I picked up the pen, the weight of it in my hand, feeling substantial, far more significant than any of the countless corporate decrees I'd signed over 2 decades. This wasn't just my signature. It was the mark of a new beginning, a quiet victory for all those who had ever been overlooked or betrayed. As I prepared to sign, a young man, a familiar figure from my Zenith days, cautiously approached my desk. It was Noah Green, one of the interns who used to avoid my gaze, especially after Caleb Vance's plagiarism became widely known. He looked nervous, his hands clasped tightly in front of him. Ms. Thorne, he stammered, his eyes flickering towards Alden Reed, then back to me. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry for everything, for how things were. I didn't understand what was happening back then. I see it now. What you stood for, what you built. It was integrity. His voice was barely a whisper, but it resonated deeply. It was an apology not just from him, but from the generation that had been caught in the crossfire of corporate ambition. I looked at him, truly looked at him, and saw not a follower, but a young man beginning to understand the true cost of silence. "Thank you, Noah," I said, offering a small, genuine smile. "It takes courage to say that. Welcome to a place where integrity isn't just a word." He nodded, a flicker of hope in his eyes, and quietly stepped back, leaving me to the task at hand. I bent over the document, my signature flowing confidently across the line. But before I handed it back to Alden, I paused. There was space at the bottom, a small blank area for additional notes. It was an impulse, a final personal touch to a journey that had been anything but impersonal. My pen hovered, then moved, inscribing a message, not for the lawyers or the board, but for myself, and for all the others like me. For those who build in silence and protect in storms. I capped the pen and handed the signed contract to Alden. He read the handwritten note, his eyes meeting mine, a shared understanding passing between us. He didn't need to say anything. The message was clear. Zenith Dynamics would eventually fade, a cautionary tale of hubris and greed. But Joy Tac Atlas would rise, a testament to resilience, to justice, and to the unwavering belief that some things, like integrity, like legacy, like the quiet dedication of those who truly build, can never truly be buried. My journey had come full circle. I was no longer just an architect. I was a foundation. And the future, for the first time in a long time, felt undeniably, authentically mine. The story of Serafina Thorne at Zenith Dynamics powerfully illustrates the enduring value of integrity and ethics in any environment. Despite being betrayed and discarded after 25 years of dedication, Serafina proved that genuine contributions, built on a foundation of transparency and trust, can never be truly buried. Zenith Dynamics' decision to dismiss her and disregard security warnings under the short-sighted leadership of Elias Croft ultimately led to the corporation's own downfall. From pain and injustice, Serafina channeled her emotions into resolve, not only to confront those who wronged her, but also to forge a new beginning. Her decisive rejection of any association with her former company and her establishment of Atlas Partners on a bedrock of core values highlights the importance of letting go of what no longer serves you and courageously pursuing a new path based on personal conviction. This narrative serves as a sharp reminder. True value will always find recognition, and integrity remains the most robust foundation for any sustainable success. Thank you for listening to the inspiring story of Serafina Thorne and her journey of self-affirmation. We hope the lessons of integrity and resilience will motivate each of us. If you found this story meaningful, please remember to like, share, to spread this message to more people. Feel free to comment your thoughts below and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss our next videos. Thank you sincerely, and we look forward to seeing you in our upcoming videos.